In this episode, Joe Rogan hosts historian and author John Lisle to delve into the dark and intricate history of MKUltra, the CIA's secret mind control and drug experimentation program. Their conversation spans covert operations during World War II, psychological warfare, government secrecy, internal and external oversight failures, and the broader implications of unchecked governmental power. Along the way, they also discuss cult psychology, memory reliability, conspiracy theories, propaganda, the psychological impact of modern information overload, and bizarre wartime experiments, such as the bat bomb. John Lisle recounts how his scholarly interest in MKUltra emerged from his PhD research, focusing on scientists integrated within the intelligence community, particularly those stationed as science attachés in U.S. embassies. His first book centers on Stanley Lovell, head of the OSS's Research and Development Branch during World War II, who pioneered early chemical and psychological warfare tools, including truth drugs. Sid Gottlieb, the architect behind MKUltra, drew heavily from OSS precedents, reflecting an institutional continuity of covert experimentation from World War II into the Cold War. MKUltra itself was envisioned as a program to discover ways to manipulate or control the human mind through drugs and psychological techniques, motivated initially by the race to counter supposed Soviet advances in mind control. Gottlieb, not a trained psychologist or hypnotist, approached mind control as an open-ended problem, commissioning over 149 sub-projects to independent researchers across universities, hospitals, and prisons, often without their knowledge of CIA involvement. Lisle highlights the vast scope and reckless nature of these experiments, including drug trials on unwitting American subjects, such as prisoners at narcotic farms who were given heroin and other substances, sometimes as rewards for participation, despite the intent being addiction treatment. The lack of oversight and moral accountability was glaring. Even those in charge, like Gottlieb, did not directly conduct experiments, but funded others, diffusing responsibility. The episode explores various drugs tested under MKUltra, including LSD, psilocybin, heroin, and even THC acetate cigarettes tested during World War II by the OSS. Early experiments hoped to find truth serums or incapacitating agents useful in interrogations or warfare, but none proved reliably effective. Interestingly, the psychological effect of merely convincing a subject they had been given a truth drug often had a stronger impact than any pharmacological agent. LSD was also tested not only for interrogation, but proposed for deliberate political sabotage, such as attempts to spiking Fidel Castro's cigars to make him appear insane. Other bizarre ideas included biochemical hair depilatories and doctored propaganda to discredit foreign leaders. John Lisle devotes significant attention to Canadian psychiatrist Ewan Cameron, whose psychologically brutal methods extended beyond drugs to sensory deprivation, prolonged isolation, and psychic driving, forcing patients to listen to repeated negative audio messages for hours daily in hopes of erasing and rebuilding personalities. Cameron's experiments often left subjects worse off, including Mary Morrow, a physician who became a patient and endured severe psychological decline under his treatments. Such experiments were funded covertly by MKUltra, blending psychiatry with CIA objectives, producing traumatic consequences for many victims. One of the most infamous segments of MKUltra was Operation Midnight Climax, where CIA-run safe houses employed prostitutes to lure Johns, who were dosed with LSD and observed behind one-way mirrors without their consent. The operation was led by George White, a narcotics officer with OSS ties, who treated the experiments as a form of amusement, using himself and unsuspecting acquaintances as subjects. Many victims suffered lasting psychological harm, including psychotic breaks, illustrating the callousness and immorality behind such covert surveillance and experimentation. Lisle discusses the systemic failures that allowed MKUltra to proceed unchecked, including the lack of external oversight by Congress and inadequate internal mechanisms within the CIA. The culture of secrecy enabled plausible deniability, reckless and unethical behavior, and ultimately embarrassment upon exposure, which paradoxically led to demands for even greater secrecy, a vicious cycle. Attempts by CIA inspectors general to intervene were often stymied by fear of career reprisals, revealing how structural and cultural barriers impeded accountability. The episode addresses the lasting damage MKUltra and related abuses did to public trust in government. Even settlements to victims were paltry and came without punishment for perpetrators. Lisle points out that while the Founding Fathers crafted checks and balances to prevent tyranny and unchecked power, contemporary political realities, partisan loyalties, electoral dynamics, and low accountability undermine effective oversight. The entrenched incentives within Congress and the political system frequently disincentivize transparency and reform, fostering environments ripe for secrecy and misconduct. The discussion pivots to human psychology, exploring how people reconcile contradictory beliefs through rationalization and cognitive dissonance. Lisle draws on classic studies of cult behavior, such as Leon Festinger's work with a doomsday cult, illustrating how adherents reinterpret failed prophecies to maintain faith. He expands the analysis to scientific paradigms, explaining Thomas Kuhn's theory that scientists, much like cult members, rationalize anomalies to preserve existing worldviews until evidence accumulates for revolutionary change. These mechanisms are intrinsic to human nature and help explain resistance to challenging ideas, even in rigorous contexts. John Lisle and Rogan examine how true mind control more often resembles cult influence rather than pharmaceutical-induced compliance. They discuss Stephen Hassan's BITE model, behavior, information, thought, and emotion control, which more accurately captures the methods cults use to exert psychological manipulation. The conversation includes examples like the Bodhi Tree cult in Austin, led by a hypnotist who used a knowing ceremony to induce powerful psychedelic-like spiritual experiences in followers despite later revelations of abuse and exploitation. These genuine psychological entrappings contrast with the often mythologized concept of chemical mind control. The duo reflects on the general unreliability of human memory, highlighting studies that demonstrate significant distortions and false recollections, even without external interference. The discussion critically examines hypnotic regression, often employed to recover memories of trauma or conspiracies, which can be easily influenced by leading questions and suggestion. This phenomenon partly fueled the satanic panic of the 1980s and ties into certain MKUltra conspiracy claims that have little substantiation. Hypnosis and memory are complex tools prone to misinformation, particularly dangerous in controversial or conspiratorial contexts. John Lisle notes the existence of genuine conspiracies, defined simply as secret plots, and how they are often obscured by a flood of misinformation and disinformation designed to confuse public understanding. Such censorship through noise saturates discourse with both true and false claims, making it difficult to discern reality. They highlight historical Soviet disinformation campaigns during the AIDS crisis as one example. The advent of social media further complicates this landscape, where bot armies, fake accounts, and algorithm-driven misinformation amplify divisions, distort truth, and suppress reasonable debate. Both Rogan and Lisle address the modern phenomenon of constant exposure to global crises, bad news, and social media arguments, stressing its detrimental effects on mental health and attention. Unlike previous generations, people today are inundated with real-time disasters, political strife, and social conflict, often leaving little room for psychological respite. While acknowledging that the internet and increased information access democratize knowledge beyond state-controlled narratives, they warn that individuals must develop strategies to manage this barrage to maintain well-being. The conversation turns to some of the stranger historical military projects. The OSS's bat bomb involved strapping incendiary devices to bats to covertly set Japanese cities ablaze, an idea even supported by Eleanor Roosevelt and President Roosevelt before being superseded by the atomic bomb. The gay bomb concept, a biochemical weapon proposed to disrupt enemy morale by inducing temporary homosexual attraction, is discussed as an example of the reckless and absurd ideas entertained under the guise of warfare innovation. These projects underscore the experimental and often ludicrous lengths governments explored during the Cold War. Joe Rogan and John Lisle briefly touch on the JFK assassination, referencing the numerous conspiracy theories and unsolved questions surrounding it. Lisle mentions the mysterious role of Jack Ruby's mental breakdown after killing Lee Harvey Oswald and the potential involvement of MKUltra figures like Jolly West. They challenge official accounts, such as the magic bullet theory, and touch on the broader culture of governmental cover-ups, drawing parallels between MKUltra secrecy and other instances of state deception. Lisle shares insights into the painstaking and often frustrating process of historical investigation, including chasing down obscure quotes, recovering missing archival pages, and corroborating sources. These anecdotes highlight the importance of scholarly rigor in distinguishing fact from fiction, the detective-like nature of researching covert government activities, and the personal dedication required to piece together hidden histories, especially when official documents have been destroyed or suppressed. The episode concludes with reflections on the difficulties of engaging with mainstream audiences about secret government projects and conspiracies without appearing irrational or paranoid. Lisle observes how many intelligent people are either unaware or unwilling to entertain uncomfortable truths due to societal stigma or cognitive biases. He emphasizes the difference between genuine conspiracies and unfounded conspiracy theories, advocating skepticism balanced with openness to evidence, warning against blanket dismissal of all secretive government actions which are historically documented.